Hi, this is Kurt with Friendly DevOps, a channel dedicated to discussing Linux and DevOps related topics. Today we're going to be deploying a series of GitHub runners to AWS using CDKTF. We're going to be deploying a GitHub running using AWS code build, Elastic Container Service, and an EC2 instance. I will be deploying these runners on an organization level. This means that these runners will be available to multiple repositories at a time. There are three tiers to deploying a GitHub runner. You can deploy it at a repository level, at an organization level, and at an enterprise level. Uh, Enterprise and organization level are very similar in only in the fact that in a GitHub enterprise you have fine-grained controls over the accounts you allow to commit to your repositories. Here is the repository we'll be using to deploy our resources to AWS. The link will be in the description. Like all of our resources deployed to AWS, you will need an AWS account, an AWS role, VPC ID, a state bucket for the storing of the state in the backend, subnets, and then for this one you will need a GitHub token. I've already generated a token, but we'll go over the permissions that we require for utilizing and deploying a GitHub action runner. First, you will need to give read-write access to actions, read-write access to administration, read-write access to commit statuses, read-only to metadata, read-only to pull requests, and read-write webhooks. On the organization level, you will need to give read-write access to administration, read-write access to self-hosted runners, read-only access to variables, and read-write access to webhooks. So before we deploy, our code build will generate a webhook for once we've successfully deployed. And we'll go to our runners. And as you can see, we do not have a runner available. So once this deploys, it will populate these with the IP address of the runner in question. So like all of our deployments previously, we'll be going to actions. We'll go to deployment workflow. We'll click on run workflow. Here we have several fields that need to be populated. First, we'll select what type of workflow that we'll be deploying. Now we have this ECS. This one is not designed to work by itself. It's designed to work in tandem with this ECS deployment. And then we have this EC2, which is designed to work standalone, just like code build. We have the resource name, which here I've given it a default resource name. If you're going to be deploying your resources, you will have to change the name if you choose to deploy multiple resources. And then project name. And then obviously we click deploy, set deploy for deploying and destroy for destroying any resources. So I'm just going to go forward with the fields that we currently have, and I'm just going to click run workflow. Okay, our deployment has been successful. I'm just going to go to AWS. All right, so let's go to code build. You see our runner, it's just been created. Go to project details, just to review. And here we have our resources and our webhook, and it's set to run on a workflow job queued. Now, we now are going to go over to our page for organization, and we're going to go to the webhooks. And you can see we have successfully generated a webhook on our GitHub organization. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to test out our GithubRunner. I've intentionally added one of our workflows to run off the GithubRunner. So I'm just going to go to our code and just show you how it works. So under our ECS deployment, this is how GitHub Actions workflows select our GitHub, our code build GithubRunner. You start the name runs on with code build, and then you put a hyphen and then the name of the code build, as we see here, runner GitHub group code build. Runner GitHub group code build, followed by GitHub these variable names. So we're going to this let's go back here, actions. So now we're going to deploy our ECS deployment, and what this pipeline does, it's going to generate it's going to build the Docker image and push it to one of our ECRs that we had created in advance during our LZ deployment. So as you can see, it's empty. And let's just go over that again in the code. Here we have our Docker in our Docker folder or directory. And let's just really go to the entry point.sh. And what this will be doing is it's going to be pulling a value from our SSM parameter store, and which is our personal access token that we generated. It's going to be registering the instance that was generated using that token. And here you can see we have also these other lines that have been commented out. These lines are for if you want to associate these runners with your repository on a repository level rather than on an organization level. Let's go back to AWS code build and monitor the deployment on code build as a workflow is deployed. Actually, on second thought, let's just continue with the deployment workflow, and we'll revisit the ECS workflow after this is done. Our next action, we will be deploying a GithubRunner onto an EC2 instance. So we'll change this code build field to EC2. We cannot deploy a code build and an EC2 with the same name, so we have to change the name here, and then we will run our workflow. So while this has started, we're just going to come over here to our actions, runners, and as you can see, only the standard GitHub hosted runners are available. Now that our deployment is complete, we'll go to AWS and verify that our EC2 instance has been deployed. And there we do. We have our EC2 instance deployed. Now, it will take some time for it to populate, but let's check right now, see if there's any. So, and there we have it. This is our new self-hosted GitHub runner, as you can see. Now let's move over and run our ECS deployment. Okay. So we do not need to have a different name for the runner from when we're deploying to an ECS. So I'm just going to click on Run Workflow. And as stated before, this is just deploying our image to, or building and deploying our image to the ECR. I just want to state that the ECS deployment does not need to be done using this workflow. This workflow was created primarily for the purposes of this demonstration. But if you are going to be utilizing the main deployment method, you will need to have an image published in advance. Right. Now that our image is pushed, we'll go over here to ECR just to verify that the image is there. And as we can see, we now have a new image. Now our deployment has moved on to this next stage where it will be deploying an ECS service. So I've also forgot to demonstrate or show. Let's go back to our code build. So as you can see, this was our previous completed 2 minutes ago. This was the stage in which we were building our this was the stage in which we were building a Docker image and pushing it to our ECR. So this is how the logs appear on AWS. So as you can see, there's no detailed logs. The logs are kept in one place, and that is on GitHub. So there's no worry about leaking information onto the AWS side for anyone that might have elevated privileges on the AWS side. So our ECS deployment is complete. So now we will go to ECS, verify that the container has been deployed. Okay, here's our cluster and the service deployments. So we're waiting for our container to reach a steady state. And there it is. So now let's go back to our runners, our GitHub profile. And there we go. We now have 2 self-hosted GitHub runners that have been registered to our organization. So there you go, registering self-hosted GitHub runners with one click of a button. I hope you enjoyed that demonstration. If you did, please like and subscribe. Take care. Bye.